Hello, everyone, and welcome to Alumni Talks. This is the first episode today with Teemu. Teemu now works as a live Ops Content Trainee on Hill Climb Racing 2 for Fingersoft in Finland and graduated just this year, 2022, here from Gotland with a degree in game design and programming. And yeah, so happy to have you here, Teemu. Hi.
Hi, Elias. Hi. Thanks for having me. It's going to be super exciting.
Cool. Yeah. And just to kind of, since this is the first episode, and to remind myself and yourself, Teemu, and everyone out there listening, what we're doing these for is the idea here is that we will talk about students' journeys into the game industry. And the idea is to talk to students that graduated as recently as possible. And Teemu setting a good standard here. I don't think you can graduate much more recently than, I mean, at this point, maybe 6 months ago or 5 months ago, 4 months ago, and already be fully employed in the game industry. And yeah, we just want to talk a bit about your journey there, what you wish you would have known during your education, what kind of trials and tribulations you went through to get to where you are right now. And yeah, that's kind of the idea behind it. And I think we will just start at the beginning. Going to talk a bit about how did you even stumble across the education here in Gotland? How did you learn about it? What made you decide to come here? Can you just tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. In the beginning, it was dark. There was nothing. No, I mean, this is going to be great because, you know, we're doing this for the first time. It's going to be the first in the series. So this is the episode where we learn everything and we make all the mistakes. So if you're listening to the recording later on, it might be different from the future ones. But hang on tight. We'll try to navigate our way through that world of the podcast. But yeah, speaking of navigating, yeah, I had a previous degree from a bachelor's degree from a business school in Aalto University here back in Finland, and I currently live in Helsinki, Finland. But I kind of I did that business jobs for a while, but in my free time I was always thinking of, oh man, it would be really cool to make a game, and I was coming up with this like little sketches and stuff, just drawing on my notebook, like, you know, this could be like a character, and it could be an infinite runner type thing, and then all the way back in 2016, actually, me and one of my longtime friends, we just downloaded Unity, the version, whatever it was at the time, and we just started making this 3D adventure game, which was the title of the game for a very long time. But sadly, we didn't have enough time to actually like work on it full time because we had other stuff and jobs and whatever. So we kind of had to ditch the project, which was it was really sad because it was making a game is really exciting, and you have to really think of many different things, you know, not just programming, not just design, not just what it looks like, not just the sound, but, you know, you have to think of the whole picture. And it was really intriguing. And I've been playing games for all of my life, pretty much. Mainly, maybe more towards Nintendo stuff, but my favorite game of all time is Age of Empires 2. And I'm always up for playing a match online against anyone who's interested.
But so this was all then way before 2019, or was this like 2018, 2017?
This was 2016, 15, that time.
Mm-hmm.
So in my free time, I was just using it to dream about games.
But then there's still around 3 years from that point until you actually kind of signed up to move to an island in the middle of the Baltic Sea and learn about game design properly or fully dedicate yourself to it. So yeah, how did you make that transition?
So back in my high school days, it wasn't really a option, quote unquote, to go study game design. It wasn't like in the sphere of, at least in my head, I didn't know there was an option to do that. But so I went the business direction. But back in 2018, it's a bit random how I found out about that, the whole game design faculty in Gotland. But we were doing a sailing trip with my friends across the Baltic Sea from Germany to Finland. We were supposed to move a sailboat, and we were kind of in a hurry. So we were doing, because the idea of sailing sounds like luxurious. You're out there, with the wind in the sun and just, having a good time. But in reality, we were in a big rush. So we had to do really, really long days, like 15 hours a day of just like grinding the boat forward. First we went to South Sweden, and then we went from there to Visby. But that trip was pretty miserable because there was no wind. So we had to go with the engine on, and the engine is quite loud. So we sit there on the back deck of the boat for 15 hours, just listening to the engine, just like for 15 hours. So I think we all went a bit mental through the trip.
Psychological torture right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And to like top it all off, there was absolutely no wind for the entire week. So there was no sailing to be had.
But so during that torturous affair of motoring a sailboat through the Baltic, you had a stopover in Visby.
Yeah,
and
we
you
arrived
pulled into the harbor right in front of Yoda.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, exactly. We came pretty late one night to the Visby harbor, so it was already dark, and we were like using flashlights to find, the boat parking slot on the harbor. And everybody was really tired because the long day. We were in the sun, and we're all dehydrated and not enough food and so on. But because it's just guys on a boat, so we the preparations weren't necessarily that well done in terms of like food and drinks. But anyways, we arrived late. We're all tired and just want to go to sleep. And then the next morning we wake up to another beautiful sunny day, and we look around and are like, what is this like medieval town? Like I personally have never heard of Visby before. I've been to Pippi Longström's place way back when I was a kid, but I don't remember anything about that. I was like 2-3 years old. That's a lot of Nordic kids do that. They go visit that place.
Villa Villekulla.
Yeah, Villa Villekulla is the name of the place. And but anyways, we wake up there. This is again in the summer of 2018. We wake up refreshed after a good night's sleep and look around like, whoa, we're in this medieval city all of a sudden. And the sun is shining. There's a lot of people because there's a lot of tourists at that time. I think it was like mid-July or something. So it's like the perfect time to go to Visby.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, wait a minute, this is freaking paradise. How did we end up here? And then we were just walking around the town, going to shops and buying food and just, gawking at all the old buildings and the beautiful parks, and which, later turned out to be Almedalen Park, but we didn't know any of this. So we were just walking around and randomly I noticed that there's a university campus, Uppsala University there. And I didn't pay much attention at that time, but it just stuck in my mind like, okay, there's a campus here. That's pretty cool. Must be a really nice place to study. And then later on at the fall of 2018, I Googled, okay, so what can we actually study there out of curiosity? And lo and behold, you can study game design.
It's actually funny because back then we were still in the F building, which is right next to Yoda, and basically looking out at the harbor. So you could have looked from the boat and read like Spear Design on the door. So
yeah, I
saved you some Googling, but yeah.
Yeah, it's but that's then I found out that like, hey, wait a minute, actually you can study game design. Wow, that's pretty cool. And then I remembered all the time back when I had been doing those little game projects and ideas, and I thought like, maybe I should just send an application and see what is gonna happen. So then I sent my high school diploma and my university degree from the previous university, and lo and behold, I got in.
Nice.
And at that point, I had to make a choice. Like I'm working at the moment. I got this study place from Campus Gotland, Uppsala University, game design, and I just decided like, no, screw it. This is like I've been thinking about this like for many years now, and now I have a golden opportunity, like given to me.
Mm-hmm.
I need to take this. So I quit my job and started all the preparations to moving to Visby.
I know.
This was it in the summer
August.
of August of 2019.
All right, all right. And then I mean 2019, a fateful year. I think, I mean, yeah, forever probably enshrined in history, with COVID coming up. And I mean, I remember it hit Sweden around like, yeah, February, March, really. We were supposed to go to GDC with our arcade game. We submitted it like a year late, and then that got canceled due to COVID. And so that was kind of when you just arrived, right? So you were there for 6 months, and then everything shut down, or how was that experience?
Yeah, it was. Well, I was there for the fall, so from September to December, and then I flew back to Finland, back home for the Christmas time. And then in the spring, I don't remember exactly. I might have visited Visby once or twice during the spring, like January. But then that's when stuff started happening, and you started reading about this news about like what's going on around the world. And then at that point, Finland also took it pretty hard, the restrictions and everything. So figured, okay, maybe just wait a moment and see what happens. And then lo and behold, it turned out that I wasn't going to come back to Visby for a while.
And so you completely stayed in Finland until when?
I stayed until my third year fall, actually.
Okay.
Which is so back in like last year, 2021 September, I moved back to Visby.
So you did experimental game design and theory and method and thesis in Visby.
So we did get the fall of the third year was the electives time.
Okay.
So we did game design in practice. We worked on a open world tower defense game, and also there was some art courses that I took, 2D animation, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was some game design course as well. I forget the name, but yeah. Then the spring of the third year, I again studied distantly, even though the decision was to be on campus. But I had to kind of, I had to talk with the teachers about the situation.
I see. Yeah, interesting to hear. So now we kind of know how you got here and how your experience was. I mean, probably different from some people, at least. I mean, I had the pleasure of actually living in Visby for all my 3 years and not doing a remote education for most of it. But maybe we can talk a bit about, even though a lot of it was remote, about what were kind of your highlights of the education, maybe also your lowlights, and try to think about this from the perspective of, okay, which experiences during the education were most impactful in terms of getting into the industry later, and maybe which experiences would you say, okay, I wish I would have learned this instead, because that would have been really helpful instead of doing insert course or activity here.
So yeah, like mentioned, every one of us who started studying in 2019, and I suppose by extension 2020 and 2021 maybe. So all of us had the additional layer of not just studying at a new school, a new life, and a new environment, but we also had to deal with the whole distance studying, online studying thing. So that by itself was like a huge thing, which no one obviously has ever done before, not the students or the staff. So everybody were kind of learning together at that time. So it was quite it was pretty hard at times and difficult and pretty lonely too, because you're as a student, you're just sitting in your room staring at a wall or staring at the computer, and if you have a luxury, you can look out the window for a moment. But it's like it was pretty tough studying at that time.
Is there something you think, I mean, it sounded quite tough, but would you say is there an upside to the suffering? Is there like, did it give you some sort of perseverance and persistence? Would you say you grew through it as well, or was it just awful in every way?
So we managed, like in the first year in the fall, we managed to start school normally, and we did all the group projects, the board games and stuff. And I was really surprised, like from the get-go. First of all, at Gotland, the students come from all over the world. It was really surprising, like, whoa, this is a really, really diverse international crowd. And that's freaking amazing. It's like people from everywhere. So it's like from the get-go, you get to learn and meet people from everywhere. And with very different backgrounds. And that was really like eye-opening to see that, wait a minute, like, this is, and they're all extremely talented and like, passionate about the topic of, games and game design. So it was a lot of fun working together, doing the board games. There's programmers in the groups, there's artists in the groups, project managers, open miners, and I think that's all, the miners. But yeah, it's a lot of fun working together. And we got to do that during the first fall. And, you're sitting face to face in a room together, drawing on a whiteboard, like, all the ideas and drawing stuff. And then all of a sudden, after a couple months, all of that stops. And now we're just on Zoom or on Discord calls, group chats, and we have to all of a sudden do the same thing. But we're either looking at the black box, just hearing our voices, or if we have cameras on, depending on the mood or, how you're feeling or what your room looks like. So you might want to keep it, hidden or not. But, or if you have other people living at the house, of course, you don't want to, share everything that's happening at the house at the same time. But at that point, we had to really like learn as students to like, how do we talk to each other now? And how do we kind of get that same feeling of being together in a room, brainstorming ideas and developing the game when we're not in the same room? Like starting from like, where do we like put the like ideas down? Do we just type them in text or whatever? And one of the cool things it was during the second year vertical slice course. So we do this big game project for 9 weeks, I think. And we had a team of 9 people, I think. So it was quite large for a student team, I think. And there we had like this whole Discord channel set up. We had like, different channels for different topics, game design, programming, art, and whatever. And then on top of that, we had like voice channels for everyone. And they were like called Teemu's cubicle, this person's cubicle, and so on. And what we did is each person would go to that voice channel and mute themselves. But then you would see like, okay, they're online and they're at their place sitting. So you would just hop in to their voice chat or to their cubicle. And then, it's easy to talk to the person. Because if you just send a message to someone on Slack or Discord, you don't know if they're online. You don't know if they're available to talk at that moment. So it really slows down the progress or iterations for stuff. So that was one thing that really helped, especially us developing the game, just have like knowing that, okay, the person is available and online. So you can just hop in and talk to them.
That's maybe not something that really translates to life now at a company or to the journey of having to apply for jobs. So it's not really, to an extent, this is like good problem solving skills, right? And you like identified an issue with the way you were collaborating as a team, and you found a solution, and you could use that like in an interview scenario to convince someone to give you a job. But are there any sort of experiences, because you mentioned, okay, you had to find creative ways to do design documentation or collaborate, right? And I'd imagine that maybe at Fingersoft, it's not necessarily that everything is just written on whiteboards all over the office, right? But you probably want to take notes like in a document that's stored on a server somewhere, or like in Google Drive or something. And so to what extent do you think kind of having to get your stuff together, collaborating digitally during your education, did you think that helped you at all, or was it
it helped in ultimately end of the day. Like that was just an example of how we had to, like, things that we liked that worked really well in the first year and surprised me, the level of cooperation between different minors and the way we had to all of a sudden adjust that way of working live to an online environment. But at the end of the day, all that is just so that you can make a good game or a good game prototype or whatever it is that you're doing, be it art or music or game design document or whatever. And end of the day, usually, of course, at work here at Fingersoft, we, everything is documented and, easily in a shareable format and easy to go through like what has been talked before and what are the reasons why stuff is done this way, and so on. And you can always, of course, ask someone, just send a message like, can you explain or give me further reasoning or more about this, whatever thing that is being developed. But at the end of the day, even us as students having to figure out a way to work efficiently and productively, it just end of the day, it leads up to getting a better game product out. And that's usually one of the things that is what people at game companies are looking for. Like, what is your portfolio? What have you done before? And then on top of that, there's that, what kind of person you are. Are you able to solve problems quickly? Can you support a team well, and that kind of stuff? But at the end of the day, from a student point of view, it's the stuff that you get done during your studies, which is how you can be measured.
Mm-hmm. Great transition, I think, right? So you're saying, okay, portfolio and soft skills kind of, right, are the two measuring sticks, at least in your experience of in the job hunt to get a gig in the industry. So maybe you can talk a bit about how this was for you. So when did you start looking for jobs? How did you start putting together a portfolio? What did you look for? What did you use? Like, where did you host it? But maybe start, like, when did you start even applying for jobs, and kind of how was that journey? What did you learn along the way?
Yeah, so I started actually looking for jobs already during the first year. Like, I started sending applications, and looking back at those applications, man, I got nothing to show. It was such a blank piece of paper. I got nothing to show for myself. Like, I've done 2 programming courses, and I'm like, yeah, I'm a programmer, I can do it. And I was just sending applications, and I was ghosted so many times. It's like, obviously it's not like, comparing to someone who has 3 years of programming experience or has graduated, is on a completely different level than someone that understands what is a pointer in programming terms.
But sorry to interrupt, but maybe to get a bit more perspective, when you say, okay, I started applying in first year, were you just abandoning courses and cranking out 8 applications a week, or what's the kind of scope of this? Like, how often would you apply to a job? Is it once a week, once a month? And were they all ghosted, or did you get any meaningful feedback as well for some of them at least?
So I was doing the courses at the same time, and then I was just trying to, every time I got something done during a course, I tried to somehow jam it into my portfolio, be it a super simple 2D game. Since I did programming, we did simple 2D games in the beginning, in the first year courses. And I was just taking those and trying to jab them into, I had a Dropbox folder where I just uploaded stuff and tried to categorize them in some ways. Like, these are school projects, these are hobby stuff that I've done on Unity, and here are some design documentation that I've done, and so on and so on. So I just try to keep a very structured Dropbox folder, which is easy to share then, or put it as part of a job application. Like, you write a motivation letter or a cover letter on why you think you would be a good fit to the job, and then you add your CV, your resume, and if you have a portfolio, you just add a link to your portfolio. So while I was doing the courses, I was just trying to update it every now and then when I had something new to show or to add.
So it wasn't even a super sexy website. You're just very pragmatically a Dropbox folder, well structured, kind of by, okay, like you said, this is sort of content, that sort of content, boom, send it out.
I wish I had realized to make a super sexy website, but okay. I didn't. I just made a stupid, boring Word document, or a Google Docs document, where I just write boring text.
But do you think a super sexy website would have helped you out, or?
Maybe it's hard to say. As a programmer, I have no visual skills. I have no ability to make stuff look nice. So
don't box yourself in. I believe you took a graphics course in third year now. So.
I took it, but I didn't pass the course, I have to admit.
I see. Okay. Oh, well, then maybe all hope is lost after. But how many? Back to the other question. So, how many applications did you do on average? Was it is it once a month, or?
I did in the spring of the first year. I think I sent 3-4 applications, throughout the entire spring. And that was just, I was just browsing through a couple companies that I was interested in, and refreshing their website every, I don't know, once a week or once a month, just checking like, is there something available? And then if there was something interesting, I would send an application, and usually it got ghosted. But
and over your entire 3 years until you got the job at Fingersoft, and we can get a bit more into the journey, exactly how you got that. But what would you say, like, did it take 5? I mean, definitely more than 5 if you did basically 5 in the first year already, but did it take 10, 20, 50, 100 applications until you got the one, so to say?
Good question. I think it was closer to 20 different, around 20-ish different places or positions or jobs or companies or whatever that I had talked to or looked at or sent an application to. So around that mark, yeah.
Did you keep track of it somewhere, or just?
I do have a list of the stuff that I had sent previously. It's not complete, but it has some that I realized to save. I realized quite late that, wait a minute, actually I should save my applications, and that I know that I applied for this position and this is what I wrote in the motivation letter before. So I realized that too late, that actually I should have stored it from the very beginning. But
why is it helpful to store it, other than to be able to look back and say they didn't want me, I'm gonna prove them wrong? But like, is there any practical reason, just to like learn, like self-scout, look at what you've written and learn from it, or why would you want to?
Yeah, it is from that point of view. At least for me, when I make something, I can't evaluate it at that point. Like I can't personally see what's good or bad about it thing. But after 6 months or a year, you go back to it and you look at it like, oh, okay, now I see. Like, okay, this is, why did I write this? Why did I put this as a portfolio case? And why did I emphasize that personality trait when I should have probably emphasized this one? So it just helps to, first of all, hit your head on the wall on why was I so stupid? But it also helps to see then you can easily track like that if your stuff is improving.
I see. Yeah. No, but I mean, that's a very good tip, I think, right? Like, first of all, just to maybe summarize some actionable points people can take right now to improve their chances is, whenever you make something, document it, like write it down, put it in a Google Drive, in a Dropbox, maybe even start having a sexy looking portfolio page. I mean, they're quite easy to build with like Wix or something. Use something like Semble, build a portfolio, right? And then the second step, if start applying early, even like you said, like, oh, I just learned what a pointer is, let me try to get a senior programming position at CD Projekt Red. That sounds like a great idea. But just to get in the habit of, okay, how do I even write an application? What do I need to do? And then store those as well, so that 6-12 months later you can look back and say, okay, oh, I should have designed this better, right? Because I think like what I heard through there is a bit, writing an application is in a way like designing a game in and of itself, right? You have a very clear target audience. There's like some person that needs to read your application. They even tell you what type of fun they're looking for, so to say, right? They tell you what they want, if they want a critical thinker or a team player or a independent worker, right? And so you can kind of try out different game mechanics, so to say, to convince them to give you a job at the end of the day. So I think, and then like you said, it's good to be able to look at your back catalog of applications and analyze them and improve. Cool. Then you did applications throughout your 3 years, and none of them led to Fingersoft, right? So at what point were you starting to get the night terrors and the cold sweats that you might not get a job, and you quit your cozy salary before to become a game developer, and now nothing? So when was that point kind of, or did you ever get those sort of doubts, or were you kind of confident all the way? And how did you eventually get to Fingersoft?
I had very little confidence that like I was good. I'm the type of person that I find it really hard to evaluate my own stuff. I need like someone else to tell me if this is good or bad. And other people have different ways of evaluating the work. So for me, it's important to like always ask, like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that game? Like if you're making a game and prototyping, my favorite part is always playtesting. It's so much fun just like seeing someone actually use or play the game that you have made. And then you kind of see instantly like, okay, nothing works. The player doesn't, they don't think the same way as you did as the designer. So
you enjoy the cringe of like.
I enjoy the cringe very much. I also asked my brother to play test a lot since I was, it was the pandemic online studies time. So I was back home in Finland and my brother lived quite near. So there weren't that many like game design people I could ask. So I just usually just sent a message to my brother, like, can you come play this to my games? And he was, by the end, he was getting quite frustrated by my constant requests.
But is he working in game design as well? Or is it just a avid?
No. He is. We play Age of Empires 2 together with him, but that's about his gaming background.
Oh, but that's good to have someone with like a bit less game literacy testing your games, because then you got to make sure things are very clear. Like if you
he gave very direct and honest feedback sometimes. Well, anyways, like back to the job situation. I think it was like the beginning of January of third year, so the last spring of studies. So you're just about to begin your thesis. You're just about to begin, like, grinding through whatever student credits that you're still missing, and the pressure of graduating starts becoming very real at that point. And I realized, like, okay, crap, I have no job waiting for me. I have nothing waiting for me after I graduate, or if I graduate. Like, first of all, I need to do that, and that's like an absolutely massive thing in thing of itself, just to write a thesis. And it's man, you got to really prepare for that thing. It's really hard. But at that point in January, this was in this year 2022 in the January, and at the same time I was thinking, like, man, it kind of sucks that I've been doing all the studies online. I haven't really like been to any industry events, because there haven't been any industry events, some online, but it's not really the same thing as meeting people in face to face. So I was kind of bummed out that, like, I'm about to graduate and I haven't really actually met anyone from the industry, and I barely meet the staff and the students at the school. So like my students that started at the same time, of course we've been talking a lot over Discord and like stuff, so it's not like we're distant from each other, but it's kind of a bit bummer. I was feeling annoyed by that fact. And then coincidentally, an acquaintance of mine, I was talking with him in, I think it was late February or something, and he said he's going to GDC. And all of a sudden I realized, like, wait a minute, GDC? That's like the big one. I thought it was canceled this year. Like it has been canceled the whole time I have been studying. So it had been kind of out of my mind, because it's not an option. But all of a sudden I realized, like, wait a minute, actually it's happening this year. And I'll be damned if at least once during my entire studies here at the game design, I need to visit at least one industry event.
For you didn't even go to Gotland Game Conference, right?
Well, we didn't have it. Like, it was online.
I mean, it was online, yeah. And
so
GDC, I just wanted to throw in for context, it's Game Developers Conference in San Francisco, and like you said, arguably kind of the biggest industry event globally, probably that and Gamescom, or I think E3 is dead nowadays, but I think Gamescom and GDC are more. I mean, E3 is more like consumer facing, but GDC and Gamescom are more, for developers to meet up. But yeah,
and
please continue.
Our school back in Gotland is always talking about their own conference organized for the students to showcase the student games, called GC, Gotland Game Conference, which people were hyping up like it's this amazing thing. It's so cool. There's so many people and all the games are freaking amazing. But us who started in 2019, we never got to see that live. We just saw the online events, which were really cool. But it's not the same thing as being there physically. So I realized, like, okay, holy crap, GDC is happening. I haven't been to a single industry event, like live industry event, during my studies. 1 + 1, I think here's something I need to do. And then I started asking the staff of our school, like, does the school have this kind of like support for students who would like to visit these events. And I hit a couple dead ends from, so I was asking like, are there stuff like that? And a couple dead ends like, there isn't. But I kept asking like different people. And then all of a sudden it turned out there is one place where you can apply for some support to go visit these events. And then I did the application, and but I didn't hear.
Sorry to jump in again, but for anyone else that wants to also go to GDC, who did you talk to and how can you apply? Is it Madeleine that you need to talk to, or?
I don't. I think you'll have to ask around. You'll probably have to find out yourself where, but
it's that like one page form where you
it's a form. It's like a Google form, and it's like you can ask for support for, different kind of stuff.
And that's from the department, right? It's not from the university.
Actually, I think it's from the university, but I'm not entirely sure like how the practical side goes. Like who is the actual official organization or entity that is the one approving these things? So
I see. Yeah. So
that's why it's hard to say. But I did the application, and then I didn't hear anything back from them for a while. I was like, okay, I guess like it's a dud. It's like futile, false hope. So I was like, okay, damn it, I'm just gonna go there myself. And then I sent again messages to the staff like, I'm going to GDC. If there's anything I can do to help the school in organizing GDC, maybe I can ask around. If I meet someone, I can talk to them. If they happen to be nearby, they can come visit the event. And I just tried to offer that I can be also try to help the school while I'm there. And but yeah, then I flew there, and I'm a student. I don't know anyone. I'm just walking around at the event. I have no idea what's going on and like what to even do at the event. Like I've never been to a GDC before. Like, so what do you do?
And you didn't have a game plan going there. You just came to, okay, I'm going to see what's going to happen and kind of react on the fly. Or did you have a little bit of a strategy going there? Where like, I'm going to look around, but also I'm going to do this because I need a job. Or
well, I had like two thoughts in my mind. And first of all, just get to know people from the industry. So just go out there and talk to them. Usually at these kinds of events, people are pretty open to talk because they're there to meet each other, especially after those tough years of being online. And so everybody was pretty open to talk. And then secondly, I had my games that I've done as a student. So I could show them off and ask for advice from real, actual game developers who have worked on big projects and stuff. So it was, those two things were in my mind. And at the event, I was just, walking around. If I saw someone at a table, I went to talk to them, like, if they looked like they felt like, they wanted to talk and not, if they're eating something, you maybe don't want to go bother them. But, if you're sitting there and someone looks like they're open for a discussion, and just, start a conversation, break the ice some way, I don't know, whatever suits yourself. And then just start talking and, who are they? What are you doing? And then if the conversation goes well, maybe you can even ask them like, hey, I've made this game. Would you like to take a look? I'm a student, so, setting the expectations. And then they either play the game and say like, oh, this is actually pretty good, and give you some feedback, like do this, do that. Or maybe you think about this. Or then they just say, great. And then you realize like, okay, I think my game is probably not up to standards yet.
I see. So but then the good insight there is, right, don't disturb people while they're eating. That's, I think, important, right? But generally you didn't run up to people and are like, give me a job now, or like anything like that. But you just came up, you tried to have normal conversation, tried to be social, get out of your comfort zone, I guess. I mean, I assume it wasn't the easiest thing ever to just start talking to random people and chat up random people across the conference. Do you have any, like, first of all, would you agree that it's kind of important to maybe genuinely be interested in rather getting to know the person versus having this like focus and aim on like, oh, I gotta get a job out of this, right? Like, I'd argue that that's the better approach to actually making contacts and eventually getting something, is to not just play the game for the sake of getting a job out of it on the other end, right? But just be genuinely interested in other people, and if the stars align, something will happen, and otherwise you've just met an acquaintance, and that's good, rather than just cheesily asking for a job and then no one wants to talk to you anymore afterwards, right? Would you agree that that's the case? And then maybe talk a bit about, okay, what's your game plan, or do you have any tips for people to randomly chat up other folks at conferences? Like, how do you get over your inner gamer anxiety and overcome your basement mentality and start talking to people?
Yeah, so on top of all of that, I agree. Like, you're there to meet people. If you want to show off your game, one way is to just grab a table somewhere and sit there and have your game open, so that people can come to you and like, you know, like, hey, what are you have something to show? Can I try it out? And like that is usually better if you want to actually show your game and get feedback. But mainly just being there, getting to know people is the best approach. And I'll actually make one correction to the eating thing. Like, if someone is eating with headphones on, they're looking at their phone, then don't disturb them. But if you're sitting at a table, if some other people come there to eat lunch, you know, and they look like they're talking around, obviously, like, that's, everyone is open for the discussion because you're all sitting at the same table. But being a person from Finland, we're not really like known to be very outgoing and, like, you know, being very sociable. So that's one thing. And then being a gamer and a basement dweller, on top of that, it's like the ultimate level of like ultimate outside of your comfort thing to do. So I just had to like swallow my pride many times and just like go there, and sometimes I really failed badly with like trying to open a discussion and really go in on the wrong time, and then you just feel like an idiot that you really disturb someone. And but people go to industry events to meet other people from the industry, so go there to meet other people.
Yeah. And so you ran around the conference for a couple of days, chatting with folks, maybe getting some to play your game. How did you have any system of keeping track who you talk to? And like, because at the end of the day, like, if you run around for 2-3 days and you talk to 100 people, like, that's not worth it anything either, right? And even though you're there to get to know other people, it is also valuable to then be able to reach out to someone after the fact. If you see, oh, this company has a position open, I know this person, let me text them, and right. But then if you just remember, I talked to someone at XYZ company, but I have no idea who this was, I have no idea how to get in contact with them anymore, like, then it was kind of wasted labor as well, in a sense, right? All of this getting out of your comfort zone and surviving cringy moments went to waste. So did you have any sort of system to make sure that after the fact you could follow up, that you remembered who you talked to, what you talked about, etc.?
Yeah, so this is again kind of like what I've done with the applications. I've documented them, like what I've applied to and what I've written. I usually, if I talk to someone for a long time, you have to write down like their name and what you talked about. Or if they give you a business card, you can write it on the business card itself. Like, this was topic, because you will not remember after 3-4 days who you talked to and what you talked to them about. And everyone else is also in the same situation. Like, so what I did is, the talks at GDC are super interesting. So people telling about like how they designed a level for The Last of Us. I think it was The Last of Us Part 2, for example, at that specific event I went to. And it was super interesting. And you're just sitting there in the audience, and at that point you're like listening to it, you come up with cool ideas, and then you write down those ideas. And while you're doing that, you can be like, oh yeah, I talked to this guy about this topic, and you can write it down at the same time. So it's like a good balance. If you're outside meeting people, talking to them, and then you go listen to the talk, sit down, just calm your mind, take in the super useful and interesting content, and then write stuff down while you're there. So but it makes sense to write down what you've talked with people, mm-hmm. and what their name was.
And you're a notebook person, just carry pen and paper basically, or did you like notes app on the phone? Or
I think I used my phone. I like pen and paper, but it's very easy to lose. So phone is pretty convenient.
And did you, apart from getting business cards, did you like ask people for their email address, or did you connect with people on LinkedIn on the spot, or was it not even that, you weren't like that focused on getting connections out of it?
People usually give their business cards out. It's pretty commonplace. I didn't have any business cards myself because well, what do I have to represent myself? This is Teemu. Yeah. But if I talked for a longer time with a person and like, we had a good conversation, then I might send an invitation on LinkedIn afterwards, just saying like, hey, it was nice chatting to you about this at GDC or at the event name. Just so it's like, that's one way to also remember.
Yeah. And do you have any notable experiences during GDC? Was there any, because I mean, we've talked before a bit about this, but so eventually you met the people from Fingersoft, and then that kind of started kicking off the rocks that led to you having the job that you have now. But were there other people that you met before that where you said like, oh, I hit it off with them and they invited me to apply, or there was an interesting position and or something along that? Or was it just the Fingersoft event at the, or that encounter at the end that was the only?
So there was, at this event specifically, there was a huge gang from CD Projekt Red, like a huge crowd, like a bunch of different people, like senior level people, and from junior to senior level people were there, and there was a bunch of them, and you bump into them every now and then. Even one of the, I think it was one of the senior cinematic people. There was a playtesting event at GDC where I went to showcase my game. So there's like 50 other games from people that they're showcasing, and then people can go there and play them. It was a lot of fun.
And you have to sign up for that when you register for the event, or how did that work?
I think there was an announcement at some point, like there's this, please sign up for it.
Like during the event, or like in the email communications that you got leading up to
it? Was one of them. I don't remember exactly when there was the announcement of that, but like you should, if you're going to GDC, just try to find out everything that's happening at the event. And so I went there. I was showcasing our tower defense game that we worked on during the game design and practice course in the fall before. And one of the CD Projekt Red, like cinematic people, came and played the game. And I was like, holy crap, this is like this is the real deal here. It's like, someone is actually, they're playing the game and they're smiling and they're having a good time. It's like, oh my God, like that, my heart was racing. It's like, oh, like, holy crap, what's going on over here? And then they played it, they had a good time, and they said like, yeah, well, this is a good start. And that for me is like mind blowing. It's like, oh my God, like, someone at that level from this kind of company, CD Projekt Red, is complimenting the stuff that I've made. It's super amazing. And then they were, of course, the people were handing out flyers like, we have these positions open. Please go to our website and apply to these positions if you think you're a good fit.
And so you did that.
I did that. Yeah. And but yeah, so there was a bunch of different people. Like, if you go to someone ask like, can you give me a job? Usually they say like, we have a website, we have the jobs there, or here's our recruiting person, please talk to them, because the person you're talking to may not be able to actually. Very rarely can they hire you on the spot just by looking at your face value. But so I was walking around the event for like the whole time, and this sounds made up, but it happened at like the last hour of the last day in the event. I swear this is true, but it sounds made up. I was walking around. There was this booth area where they had like indie studios presenting their games, like small and young indie studios. And I was there just playing their games. They had like the unpacked guys were there. Well, I suppose they're not small and not, but anyways, like they were there. They had, the people from their company there present the game. There was some other stuff as well. And it was cool just, playing everybody's games and talking to the developers. It's you get a lot of ideas and they can give you a lot of feedback. And then at the very last hour, I was walking and I saw this like stand, Fingersoft, and I didn't know them from before, so I Googled the name. I was like, oh, it's a company from Finland. I don't know if I should talk to them because, I can meet them back in Finland and I'm here in California on the other side of the world. Why should I come here to meet with other people from Finland? But then I figured like, it's the last hour, I might as well talk to them. And then I go talk to them. They were super nice. We had a good chat, a couple chuckles, and they said like, yeah, here's our brochure. Like these are the positions we have available. And one of the positions was the live ops content trainee. And then I didn't apply straight away, but it was like a few weeks later when I came back to Finland, to home, that I applied.
And any of the people you met there, are you working with them now still? Or
I've met them a couple times. The Fingersoft has like over 100 employees, and we have 2 offices, one in Helsinki and one in Oulu. And I'm currently working at the Helsinki office. Mm-hmm. And the people who were at the event are in Oulu office. So
I see.
When we mix up together, we meet each other.
I see. And did they, during that chat, or how was your experience? So people give you this brochure, but do they also say, oh, from our discussion, it seems like this could apply to you, or like, oh, this is a position that could work for you? Or do you get, because you mentioned to me before we recorded this that, okay, you were specifically looking for these sort of traineeship, internship, kind of junior positions, right? So that was one criteria that you brought into the search. But did you get any feedback where people were like, okay, no, you don't have to do, because like, I mean, you studied programming, why now a live ops content, right? Like how do you even know what that means? Like, do you get this sort of discussion with people where they're like, okay, oh, this is actually what the position is, I think you could fit, you would enjoy the sort of work there?
Yeah, so, well, first of all, live ops content means I create more playable stuff for players. So we have weekly events for players at Hill Climb Racing 2, and then I'm there making content and levels and stuff. But yeah, you're right, I did study programming as my minor, but game design as my major. So that, of course, I was a bit mixed up in my head, like, you know, am I a programmer or am I a game designer? Which one comes first? Or does it matter in the end of the day? But so I had applied previously for programming jobs, game design jobs. So it's like, I didn't really have a preference one way or the other. I just had studied programming specifically as a minor. Yeah. But I think the school also emphasizes like, you're studying game design first, and then you're doing that for a minor. So
you're all game designers.
Yes, and I did participate in an art course. So
basically an artist. Yes. Yes. No, but I mean, very interesting. And then maybe we can talk a bit about, because you mentioned when you first started applying to jobs in the first year, it was kind of like, oh, thanks for applying, and then nothing, right? Yeah. I assume Fingersoft wasn't the only job where you managed, or the only application where you managed to get like a more meaningful answer and maybe an interview. So can you maybe talk about how was it, and maybe Fingersoft was the only one, but how was it getting a bit further into different application processes? How was the experience like, or how was it for you? Kind of, does it start with, okay, we'd like to have a chat, or, oh, cool, now do this work test, then we have a chat? And can you just talk a little bit about how that was for you with different applications that you had ongoing? How was it going past the first stage, and how far did you get in different processes before you eventually landed where you landed?
Let's see, I have to really think hard here, because to be honest, I think it was 99% that ghosted me. So like, it was thank you for the application, and then nothing. Just complete silence. There was one where I got a couple rounds of interviews. They showed me the game, and we played it, and I told my thoughts about the game. And I had to do a personality test, which was quite new. So they asked me to do, like, you know, they wanted to know what kind of personality I am. And then based on that, they would see how I fit in the team. But I think that was all very specific to that specific company. But no, I didn't make it to interviews much at all. I think this job that I now have, Live Ops Content Trainee, I think it's the one that I actually had interviews. I had one other interview, which was the personality test one, and then this, and all the rest were just ghosts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so this one was the only one where you mentioned, okay, you played a bit of the game and you discussed the game. I mean, for a personality test, there isn't much to prepare, but for another interview, like for example, for this job, when I went a bit more towards the kind of technical interviewing side, or like you mentioned, okay, look at the game, what would you do here, kind of, right, questions. How do you prepare for that? How do you prepare for the later stages of the process? Or how did you prepare for that?
Well, at that point, it's pretty much your experience as a game designer and how you look at it, how you look at the game, how you see. And it's also, it's not just like a monologue of you telling, I think it should be like this, I think it should be like that. It's more, talking with the interviewer, like, where do you see this game going? Why do you want to do it like this? And how, like, it's just a discussion. You ask them, like, what would you like to do with the game? Where would you like to take it? And it's more of like a back and forth, which is maybe a better way to approach it than just they asking, what would you do? And then you just give them, a big list of stuff that you think should be done.
Yeah. So first of all, treat the interview a bit more like a brainstorming session, not like a TED talk.
Yeah, because ultimately it is, you're working at a team. It's not one person. It's a team, and a team works together. They brainstorm together. So that usually is a good way. For this specific job, so first of all, I've applied to producer internship roles. I applied to programming internship roles. I applied to various different categories of jobs. So not just programming or not just game design in general. So and they all ghosted me. So, but here when I got the invitation to the interview for the live Ops Content Trainee at Fingersoft, I basically, at that point, since I've been ghosted so many times, I was like, okay, like this is it. Like this is my moment. Like, I finally get to an interview. And holy crap, like, I need to be ready. Like this is finally I get a chance to showcase. And that's kind of, at least for me, it was a moment like, this kind of doom music kicks in moment. You're like, okay, this is like everything I ever got, like, all in. And then just like what I did, I spent hours and hours and hours on YouTube looking at people play the game and YouTubers playing Hill Climb Racing 2. I read through every single review I could find on the Google Play Store. It's a mobile game. So all that reviews I could find on Google Play, on the Apple App Store, and just read everything I could find. And then I made this huge Google Sheets file where I just added everything I could find. And I tried to analyze the data, and I tried to make these like charts and stuff based on like, if someone gives, a certain star amount rating, like, and what did they write? I tried to figure out if there's a way I can create this word cloud at what people are saying. I started
code the themes from the
from the feedback from what people have given and comments from YouTube videos, which was a lot of fun reading through those.
So that research theory and method actually came in handy, basically, right?
Yeah, it's like just going through everything and like packaging it nicely. And then I went on their Fingersoft website. I took their brand colors and I colored the whole Google Sheets with their brand, so it looks like as official as possible that I could obviously make. I don't have their resources as when I'm an applicant, but I tried to do everything I could. And then I started coming up with levels for the game, just like ideas, and I played the game for hours and hours and hours and hours.
How did you come up with levels kind of before the interview? Did you just sketch them in Paint like a proper programmer, or how did you go about that? Or, because I mean, you didn't have access to the engine, of course, you couldn't like actually prototype or build levels. So did you hack together something and started prototyping levels? So how did you do that?
I realized now I could have done it much smarter, but I just drew them like on paper, like different ideas and like topics and stuff, like themes for levels, topics for levels, and this kind of stuff. But it was really like doom music kicks in and like, this is it, like all or nothing, like,
So you basically worked as if you had the job for a month before you ever did the interview. In a way.
Yeah. It's like, because I was really feeling the pressure because I think this was late March, April, something like that. I don't remember exactly, but around this time. So I was like, I'm about to graduate in a few months, and like, I have nothing waiting for me. So like, I I've been given a chance now, finally, after all the ghostings from different companies. Like, now, let's go.
Yeah, I see. And then how did that go in the interview? Were they impressed with your color-coded analysis of 6,000 Google Play reviews, or kind of like, yeah, how, because like, did you even have an opportunity to bring that up, or did you send it in beforehand, or?
I showed it in the interview. Like, we were talking, and they seemed to, I think they liked it. I think they seemed to like what I showed them, and perhaps I left a good mark. You'd probably have to ask them. but I got a second round of interviews, and then a third round, and then at that point it was just a discussion like, so when can you start?
And what was the second and third round about? What did you do there?
So first it was just like introduction, like, who are, just getting to know each other. Then the second round was, again, just continuing where we left off, if I remember correctly. And then there was my team lead and the producer for the game were there in the interviews.
And before that, it was just like their hiring manager or recruiter, HR people.
No, I think it was my team lead and the producer of the game in both rounds.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. And then in the end, HR was involved because it was about practicalities of starting the job.
Contract negotiation. Yeah. Was there much of that, or did they just put it in front of you and take it or leave it, kind of, or did you get to negotiate your salary and so on?
Well, there was, of course, like the case, I'm still a student, and I told them I would like to start right away. I haven't graduated yet, but I am willing to start right away. But then from their side, they were like, it's a month. Come on, dude, graduate, please.
Yeah. So it was basically like in May when you had the interview with them.
Yeah. So yeah. So I had the job. I flew back to, so this whole spring I had been in Finland studying online, despite the staff protesting the idea of me being online and me protesting their protests, because I told them, like, I need to find a job, and I'm sorry, I need to be here where the jobs are. So we had a bit of back and forth there, but then for May I came back to Visby, to Gotland, to finish up the thesis, and there was a Gotland game conference. I still had an apartment there that I had to empty, but by the time I came back to Visby in early May, I had already signed the contract.
I see. And they made you do the smart thing of just getting through your thesis, making your mom proud, getting another degree. Yes. Cool. No, but very nice. Maybe we can chat, and we have maybe for another 10 minutes or so, and then let's see if there are some questions from the audience, because if you come to the live recording of these podcasts, then after we stop the recording, we want to do a bit of Q&A, questions, get to know each other with whoever we're interviewing. And so today we're going to have some questions for you, hopefully, maybe. But before we get there, I think it would be a bit interesting to talk about, what do you even do nowadays? Like, what is your job? How is that day to day? How is it? Because I assume it's very different working at 100 person company than a 5 or 9 person team at the university. We're more specialized, and generally you talked a bit about already. Okay, as a live ops content person, you create this weekly content for Hill Climb Racing 2. How does that work? How is that scheduled? What's the process? Kind of, can you walk us through that a bit? A day in the life for you at work, basically, or maybe a week at work. What are your roles? What are your responsibilities? Chat a bit about that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff. So at the moment, there's 2 of us working on live ops content. So we do it's mainly level design, but it's a little bit of game design. So me and my team lead, he's a really great guy. He's really been supportive of me with learning the stuff, and he's really there helping me out all the time, because I'm a total noob and I'm just learning, and he's a really cool guy. But like a typical week is, we have a schedule that goes months ahead of different events that we want to have. There's different kinds of events. There's public events, which anyone can play if they just have the game. There are team events, which are more competitive, and there are different types of games. There's a cargo event type where you have this big wagon behind you and you have a lot of stuff on it, and it's basically a physics-based 2D racing game. So it's a lot of bumping around and flipping and flopping, and it's pretty fun to play. But one of them is a cargo, and you have to transport the cargo without it flying away while you're driving on this bouncy road. And the more you can take to the goal, the more the better score you get. There's stuff that like be as fast as possible. There's all kinds of variations to it. So there's a little bit of game design in that, coming up with like, how do we utilize the existing stuff that we have in the game, the assets or the codes or the different gameplay modes that we already have, and how do we create new content with that. And then once we have that set in a big calendar schedule, it's like, okay, we have this type of game, this type of event, this type of event. We have a cargo event, we have a be as fast as possible event, we have a moon event where the gravity is a little bit different, so the game plays a bit differently. Then we start creating the content for them, and the pipeline is depending on the event type and how big the event or whatnot, it can range from 2-3 weeks beforehand. We start creating the event or the content for the event, so the actual levels, or it can be up to 4 months if it's a bigger type of level or content package that we're creating, or even up to 5 months. So it varies a lot, but we're always working a lot ahead. So, but yeah, so once the plans is set up and we've gone through like, okay, these are the next events coming up in a few months, then we just start working on the actual levels themselves.
And what does that mean? How does it look like to work on a level? Like we talked about, like for your interview, okay, you just did sketches on paper. I'm sure nowadays you don't just do sketches of paper, but maybe you still start with sketches of paper. So how does that work? Do you start with a sketch on paper, take a picture, send it over? Do you start kind of mocking things up in Engine as soon as possible and start play testing and then sharing it? How does that look like, the process of actually creating a level?
So that's a really good question. It's the levels themselves for the events are usually around 30 seconds. It takes, if you're really good, you can do it, less than 10 seconds, depending on how big the level, how long the level is. Like it varies a lot, but around like 30 seconds. So they're not very long. So in terms of like level design, to really, at least what I do, I try to focus on like one thing that's unique in one level and try to focus on that, making that interesting, and kind of having the setup for the one interesting thing, then the interesting thing, and then some sort of like reward or some way to release the pressure from the player, if it's a really difficult tight squeeze that they have to go through, or a long jump or something, for example. So just trying to like figure out, but usually it takes a long time to get to that, like what is interesting about this. It's just sometimes it's a lot of doodling, just coming up with like different ideas for levels. You look at it like, I don't know, like this, and then you start playing it and you're like, this is really boring. Sometimes you take some existing level type and you play around with that for a bit, and then you switch it up a few times. There's many different ways, but usually it takes 5-6 iterations of one level before it starts reaching the point like, okay, I think this is okay. Not great, but okay. And at that point, usually the level is good enough that it's not buggy and it doesn't break the game. Then you pass it on to QA, quality assurance, and then they start playing the level with like different vehicles and different settings and different customizations to kind of see like if there's stuff that could trigger bugs or whatever. And then there's a little bit of back and forth with that. And then the level also, gets upgraded as it becomes more interesting and as more interesting stuff, is found. So it's me and the team lead playing the levels and, coming up with stuff together as well.
Do you have some sort of data or analytics from maybe previous events, previous levels, where you can see how many people played them, how often a given player replays them, to kind of see, okay, this idea we had is amazing, right? Like if you would be making YouTube videos, you could see, okay, this one has a lot of views or a lot of like thumbs up, right? But like with a game, if you don't have any sort of feedback system for you as a designer or developer, I mean, it's difficult for you to run around town and in the subway try to find someone that's playing Hill Climb Racing 2 and like peek over their shoulder and ask them questions afterwards, kind of, because this is what we do at the education a lot, right? It's like you have these playtest sessions, you sit there, you look at people play, do this like observational study basically, or maybe you ask them or have them fill out a questionnaire while you stare over their shoulder to make sure that they check that they love the game, kind of. But do you have any systems there that help you figure out which of the content that you created was successful with your player base, so that you can kind of going forward say, okay, the time trial one's actually very successful, but if you have 2 of them in a month, not so successful, so maybe 1 of them a month, or oh, this sort of level with this sort of mechanics seems super great, let's try to explore that again further down the line. Do you have any sort of data-driven design system going on?
There is of course, there's a lot of data, since the Hill Climb Racing franchise has over 2 billion downloads at this point, which is quite a lot, I think. So there is a lot of data, and there's an entire data and analytics team, which is quite commonplace in game studios. I can't go too deep into that stuff on details, but there is a lot of data, and we get to see how different events perform. We get to see how different levels perform. We get to see how players react to stuff. But end of the day, especially my team lead, who has been working on the event stuff for a longer time, you start getting a pretty good touch as well, like just from experience, like how much variety you should have in the game. And of course, the data helps in making informed decisions, but it's also a lot of keeping it fresh as well for the players, so it doesn't start feeling grindy in a sense. Or at least that's the ideals that we want to achieve. It probably doesn't always come up that way, but at least that's what we're striving to do.
Do you ever do some sort of like A/B testing where you have like one event running or like one version of a level running for half your player base and then another version of the level for the other one? Or is it by the time you're kind of done with making a level for an event or content for an event, that goes out to everyone at once all over the world?
It's once the event is done, it goes out. So it's for everyone.
I see. But I mean, you do one every week, right? So you have a lot of kind of data points there to compare.
Yeah. There's a lot. Yeah.
And is this typically where you have like after it's out 2-3 days later, you have a sit down with the analytics team and they walk you through, okay, this is how it performed, this is what worked really well, this is like this metric, like engagement metric that went up compared to last week's event? Or how does it? I understand that you can't leak specific kind of business metrics, of course, right? You can't tell us like concrete numbers, but maybe a bit, because I think this is something that we don't do that much in the education here, this kind of quantitative and data driven design. So I think it's very fascinating to hear about how that might impact your day-to-day life as a designer to be able to get this feedback at scale and to get kind of data to inform your decisions.
Well, we work together with the analytics team as well as the community management team. So we have 2 different perspectives from it. So we hear it, we can hear it directly from the players, which is super valuable. And it's really, you have to be really grateful that the players are vocal and they like to talk about the game and they give feedback. So it's really, thing that we try to cherish and keep players engaged. And it's very humbling to have players play the game and enjoy it and talk about it as well and interact with the developers. And then on the other side, we have, of course, the analytics stuff where we can see the data itself. So we get like two different points of view.
Do they ever disagree? Is there ever like, everyone loved this, but no one actually played it for much or for long?
No specific thing comes to mind. One event that I worked on, so I made the levels and like the whole thing. It was a while ago. I remember watching one YouTube video of the event itself, and which itself is crazy. It's like, you know, stuff that I've made is now on YouTube. Like people are playing it and they're commenting on it, and you know, there's this kind of openness and this kind of openness. And then I saw like one guy, one person on the internet wrote, "Nice event." And I was like, oh my God, someone said that. Like, they said that about my thing. Like, I should remove everything from my CV, from my LinkedIn. I should just put that, like a screenshot of that one comment. Nice event.
Says your header on your exactly. Your LinkedIn profile. Yes.
I like that. I melted when I saw that. I was like, oh my God, like somebody complimented the thing.
So that's for you. I assume it just means a lot more if it's like a person that writes it than to say, "Oh, this number went up by 10%. Good job." Or like,
it's both. It's both, obviously, of course. But but just, you know, being just a few months ago, just a student, really struggling to graduate, to, you know, making content, and then all of a sudden it's on YouTube. People are talking about it. It's bizarre.
A wild ride, yeah. I know, very, I mean, super fascinating stuff. I mean, we could talk for another hour probably about how exactly you make levels and play test them, and when the handoff exactly happens and how you keep track of all of this internally. But I think this has been really, really interesting to kind of hear how you got from a sailing trip leading you into the Visby harbor to now making levels for Hill Climb Racing 2. A long journey. It was very, very cool to talk about it. Thank you so much for taking part. I think it's slowly time to wrap it up. We've been at it for an hour and around 15 minutes now.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and hopefully we didn't make too many mistakes, this being the first in the series.
We'll find out soon together. Let's see if we also get some positive YouTube comments underneath this video.
We can cringe together in 6 months when
yes, please.
People look at it afterwards.
I will need the emotional support. But yeah, thank you so much. I'd say let's wrap up the recording, and then as a reminder, if you show up in the future to the live recordings, you get to ask questions directly to our guest, and we're gonna do that now without recording it so that we can have a relaxed conversation, and hope to see or hear you all back 2 weeks from now. Goodbye.
Bye.